So I finally played through all three chapters of Tell Me Why, and I'm gonna try not to compare to Life is Strange because it is one of my favorite game franchises of all time. But it is hard not to, considering the legacy Dontnod Studios left behind with these games. So yeah, had high expectations for Tell Me Why, and now that I played it, I can give it a proper review and explain a little bit about my final thoughts about the game. But yeah, I mean. There are a lot of things to like about it. The characters were good. Allison and Tyler I think they're good characters. However, I don't think the game does anything much with that. And I'll explain a little bit what I mean. So this game tells the story about Allison and Tyler Ronan, who after a tragic incident come back to their house years later. And, they start unraveling a mystery and they start, try to like kind of exploring, poking around the town, talking to people from their past and from their mother's past. And, I thought the story would be something to like. I thought it would be like Life is Strange, like something, I expected something like heart-wrenching, being forced to make some difficult decisions, some life and death decisions. However, this story doesn't really do much with the characters or the setting or anything really. Yeah, so for example, the game introduces some supernatural elements. So Allison and Tyler have some special abilities, so they can remember stuff, something you and I can do and everybody else can do, It's like they can remember stuff from years ago and it helps them in the moment, but it kind of plays a cutscene when they do it. And, in the trailers, this looked cool, but I honestly, while playing the game, I was like, this is so underwhelming. Like, yeah, like the memories play, but that's it. It doesn't tell you really much of anything. And something else, yeah, they have like this other ability. They can talk through their minds, like they can talk without opening their mouths. And aside from the fact that this leads to some very hilarious like some scenes where if you don't choose anything, they're just like standing right there like robots, like just not talking, and then they start like talking to each other, but they're like staring, and like the person they're talking to just like lets them, stare blankly into space. But this ability you only use it like twice or 2 or 3 times during the game, and it doesn't really change much. This is another thing I wanted to talk about. Like the dialogues are pretty linear, so like the choices you make don't kind of matter in the end. Like this is not a game like Detroit Become Human or the Walking Dead series. Even the other Life is Strange games, like yeah, they were linear, but they had some like a lot of branches where you can go in. Like Detroit Become Human literally changes the entire ending of the game depending on your choices up until the moment of the ending. This game does nothing. Tell Me Why it doesn't really change much, and that is something I have a really big issue with. So maybe I've been watching too many Hollywood movies. However, I thought this game could have had a little bit more action. For example, Life is Strange 2, they weren't even kidding around with that game. That game had some intense situations. And it also had some situations where you had to make some difficult choices that basically determined if a character died or lived, or if you revealed some huge secret to your brother. However, in this game, nothing really happens. Like there is a system, like the twin union system. So if you make good decisions, basically the two siblings grow closer together. If you make a bad decision, then they kind of like get angry at each other. But in the end, it doesn't really change much. Like it changes the ending, and that's it. Like you get either one of two endings. And the same thing happens with Life is Strange, but at least they kind of like paved the way with a lot of more some like interesting decisions. And yeah, so the game is kind of boring. Also, this is something really huge that I wanted to talk about. Like, yeah, I mean, with these games, like you spend a lot of time like just doing chores. Like basically, go, do the laundry, or let's stack up this shelf with things, or go count the things in the shelves, and let's clean up the house. We're gonna have not guests, but like stuff like mop, like cleaning the kitchen, things like that. And I'm fine with those things. Like I'm fine with chores in games. Like not every game has to be like shooting and if you're gonna have like a story, like a realistic story in a video game, then chores are completely fine. But when you make the entire game just chores, it becomes extremely just boring. So yeah, like the game was so boring, I just started making like all the wrong decisions towards the end just to make it a little bit more interesting. And that's a big thing that it's gonna turn off a lot of players. Like if you're a casual gamer, you're probably not gonna like this game. The game has some positive elements. The scenery is cool. It gets interesting at times, especially during the second and third episode. It's pretty nostalgic too. Like it plays a lot with like childhood stuff. You know, imagine like children's imagination, that kind of stuff. And I like that stuff. I like the positive elements of Tell Me Why. However, all the other negative aspects don't really do much for the game. And I had high expectations for it, but yeah, it didn't really deliver much. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to give it a 65 out of 100. It's not a terrible game, but it's definitely not good. Like that's pretty much all I have to say about Tell Me Why. But anyways, I think that's all. See you next time.